I know it's been reported now that Tua, his physicals, maybe he didn't pass with flying colors with all the teams, correct?
Yeah, Mike Lombardi, who worked in front offices for half a dozen teams during his NFL career, said that 2 teams flunked him at the Combine, which makes absolute sense because Tua wasn't healthy at the Combine. And he also said that Tua had another wrist injury that hasn't been reported, which frankly is adding another injury to the long list of other injuries that Tua has had, including both ankles, surgery on both ankles, a knee, a finger, a broken nose, and of course the hip, which was an injury so serious that most of the people that have that kind of injury is because they've been in auto accidents. So, yeah, Tua has a long list of injury history, and obviously now the durability has to come into question as a result.
So now, of course, the skeptic is saying this is like misinformation coming from the Miami area. Not saying you, but this is the Dolphins helping promote this because they really want him. What is your take on that, Armando?
Well, I mean, it was no secret that they wanted him not this January, 2019 January. Right. In fact, there was a whole thing down here that was a Tank for Tua movement and hashtag and social media thing. And the team was actually doing it. I mean, they set up a roster to lose and yet didn't lose enough.
Right.
They sucked at tanking, which is amazing. And so they were all in on the Tua thing. And then, we take a detour into the other ankle injury and then the hip injury. And now we have a pandemic and your doctors can't examine guys and clear them and you can't go through the draft process. So up until, I would say, November, they were on track for Tua. That is no secret. The problem has been since November, fate has not cooperated.
We're joined by Armando Salguero from the Miami Herald, and he's a Radio.com NFL insider. The Dolphins presently have 6 picks in the top 70. We know they have the 3 first-rounders, 2 in the second round, 1 in the third. Do you think the brain trust there is in a hurry to deal away some of these picks to move up and draft a guy with a checkered injury history in Tua, or are they willing to sit there at 5 and either pick Tua or Justin Herbert? We've heard his name is gaining some steam in that war room.
Yeah, well, the brain trust here, and we're using the word brain trust loosely, but the brain trust here, they would love to have a crack at Joe Burrow, okay? He's going to be the number 1 overall pick. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to draft him. That's going to happen. The Dolphins have designs on trying to tempt the Bengals with some of those draft picks you mentioned earlier, but I just don't think that's going to work. The Bengals need a quarterback too. They need to be relevant as well, and the best way to do it is to pick the guy that threw like 7,000 touchdowns for LSU last year. So they're going to do that. That leaves Justin Herbert and Tua. And, the only other team that really needs a quarterback, a starting caliber, franchise-type quarterback, that high in the first round is the Los Angeles Chargers. Mm-hmm. So my guess is the Dolphins are going to get one. The Chargers are going to get the other. The question is, will either of those teams go up to number 3 to try to trade for it? I don't see them going up to number 2. I think the Redskins are going to pick Chase Young.
Yeah. That's what I was going to follow up on that. Do you think that the Dolphins have to trade up to get Tua? Or do you think that they're confident Tua can slip to 5? I know you can't really control what other teams do behind them. Let's just say Jacksonville's of the world or the Raiders, who also have multiple first-round picks. But do you think that Brian Flores and that staff is thinking, you know what, we could probably sit here at 5 and still get our guy?
Well, at the very least, they can sit there at 5 and get their second guy.
Right.
Because if the Chargers jump them for someone, and the funny thing about it is the Chargers are said to be very high on Herbert, whereas the Dolphins, they've been, as we mentioned earlier, kind of locked on Tua for a while. So sitting there at 5 might be fine. And honestly, I don't see the other teams that you mentioned coming up and jumping those two teams, because remember, it takes two to tango, and any team that's trading down to 7 or wherever Oakland is picking, I don't even know where they're picking because they're not even on my radar.
They're 12 and they have 12 and 19.
Yeah, there's no team that's going to go from 3 to 12.
Right.
That would take multiple first-round picks this year and next year. And I just don't see why the Lions would do that. I don't see why, it could be done, obviously, but in a year where the Lions need to win and their coach needs to win and the general manager needs to win to stay employed, that would be a crazy move.